asking the question, what are your strengths, right?
Hmm.
That just opens up a whole new conversation. But you're right. I think initially at first, people are going to be like, what do you mean? Like, what do you want to hear from me? Like, what's the right answer? Because you're in that position of influence, you're in that
That's
position of
right.
strength, you're in that position of power, right? So,
And this is not a one and done conversation, right?
no,
So you ask it and you see what the response is, and then you curate it and you share. You know what? I really saw your strength show up when, and you give
mm,
them a real good example. But this is a continuous conversation. This isn't a one and done conversation. But I want to go back to this influence and leaders not understanding that they actually have power, especially when you have people that report into you, or that you have a title that has some sort of meaning to people. And we're all humans. I used to have a executive title at a large corporation, and people reacted to that, and sometimes they wouldn't even talk to me because of that title. And John, you sort of got past that barrier in reaching out to me, but it actually exists. So it goes both ways, that influence, but people would
mm,
put me in a different pedestal or category because of this title. And so, abuse of that is a possibility when you're not serving for the good of everyone. When you're serving, or you're working out of your ego and your own personal needs, then you may not be a good leader. Really, let's be honest with that.
yeah,
You're making choices that are not great choices for that moment in time. So, and you can't, as leaders, we can't take advantage of people. We need to make sure that everyone feels that they can stand on their own 2 feet on solid ground and not need you in order to be successful. In fact, the good leaders hire people that are better than them at
mm,
everything, so that they have the strongest team, and they become then the storyteller and the visionary for what's possible. And then they just activate all the people on their team for what's possible. But a good leader is a great storyteller and a great visionary. Maybe not knowing how to do all the technical things. John, I phoned you yesterday. I'm like, okay, tell me how to do this. And you're like, you had a good giggle, because you're like, and I'm like, I just don't know how to do it. So I'm going to phone someone that I know does it. And that's
yeah,
the power of being a good leader, is just play to your strengths, and someone around you has the answers, and you go to them when you need them.
yeah. Well, so that's what I would call a mature leader, right? A leader that understands what their weaknesses are, right, in terms of where the gaps are, in terms of what they need to do, in terms of their skill sets, and then leveraging and supporting and using. I'm not going to say use, but working and collaborating with the team to pull out their strengths, so you're working cohesively as a unit. Because I
Mm-hmm.
know, when I was, hiring and I was bringing people onto the team, I would bring in people that were stronger in certain areas than I was, because I knew those were gaps for me. And that just enabled, a better cohesion with the team, because now we're collectively working together. Everybody has their superpower, and we can all work together to move forward, kind of like the Marvel guys almost, right? Like, we're just super strong. And I'm not going to say I'm Iron Man or anything, but it's all about putting that
You
all
are Iron
together.
Man. What do you mean? You are Iron Man. You
Oh
can't
yes,
say
that's
I'm
right.
not.
I didn't even say that on purpose. It just, I was thinking, I was watching a video of Tony Stark yesterday and Iron Man. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, anyways, everything kind of comes together. It's kind of funny, but you know, it does come down to supporting the people around you. It comes down to acknowledging and really lifting them, right? Like that.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's the ultimate role of a leader. The role of a leader is to promote people, to push them forward, so they can feel strong in what they do every day, so they show up powerfully. It's not my job to motivate, and that's one thing I learned from somebody I've been following on Instagram. His name's Daniel G. Big shout out to him. But my job's not to motivate, but my job is to give you the tools to inspire you, to make sure that you know what you're doing, so you can propel yourself forward,
I have a
right?
really good example of how I would do that. When I would, and this is goes back to we talked about this, I think, last week, is wherever your day one is, that's your starting point. So people would come to me and say, Heather, how do I career advance? How do I speak on a stage? How do I, be confident in the words that I use? And so what I would do is, those people that would give me those kinds of questions, and they'd feel, and I could see that confidence was probably not not shining through at the highest level. Whenever I would do a town hall or a big group type of setting, what I would go to them beforehand is I would say to them, I'm working on my ability to captivate an audience, and I'm working on, removing these 3 filler words, and I'm working on this. So I give them 3 things I'm working on. Could you be a coach for me during this session and take notes for when I'm doing those things or when I'm not doing those things, and then give me feedback afterwards? And the reason I would do that was, one, because I've got now free coaching for myself, because no one's going to give the boss that kind of feedback, but I've invited it now. And because they said that's what they wanted to learn, I want to show them that I'm not at their day one, I'm at my day one. My day one is here, and I'm still working on improving the areas that I'm focused on. And because they're now focused on giving me feedback, and they're really listening, and when you're really listening, you're really learning. And so it was a way to teach, but also a way to sort of break down those barriers between, boss and subordinate, but based on what they wanted to have as an outcome. And it was amazing, because I would hear back from them what they heard, and sometimes it wasn't the message I wanted to put out there, and because we don't, once the message comes out of our mouths, we don't get to control that.
Yeah.
But it was the message that they needed. So I was able to then, on my next session, because I would go across the country and be in each province, be in the team, the next session, put those things into place. And then here's the other piece: I would loop back with the person that gave me the feedback and say, hey, I did what you said was a good thing to do in my session in Montreal. It worked awesome. Thank you for the feedback. So I closed the loop on that feedback. And I think that's a really good example of using every moment as a teaching moment and activating the strengths of your team to make sure that they can see that we're not all the same, but we're all on our day one. So I that was my favorite part of my job is activating people like that, because like their faces, John, when I would say, I want you to be my coach for this session, they were like, like they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. And then because I closed the loop, and that was something I learned afterwards, because I didn't want them to think I was just, not listening to their feedback. And they wouldn't know that I implemented the feedback because they wouldn't see it, right? So I needed to close the loop.
Yeah, it's funny. I love that you shared that story. And actually, I just did something recently like that. It was last week. I presented my speech that I was preparing for on Friday to a group of people, and they all gave me feedback, right? Which was fantastic. I took my feedback down. I knew I wasn't going to go back to them, right? So it wasn't an opportunity where it was like a team, but it was a team in the moment that I needed support. And what was great, and what I acknowledged in them, was now their feedback that's going into my story is now part of the journey, and they are now part of my speech, right? And as we grow as leaders, the people that give us that feedback, the people that participate in our lives and help us grow, they are now part of our journey. They're part of our story.
That's the connection point right there. They feel connected and they want to celebrate with you.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
I thought yes, somebody, our chief is saying, amazing story, my jaw would drop as well. No, it's, this is what I realized. And so, it was funny when you talked about, I took that plunge to reach out to you, to connect with you all those years ago, even though that was, I'm going to call it the title barrier, right? The thing that kind of separates people on this side and people on this side. And, the thing that gave me, and I'm going to use this word, and maybe it's not the right word, but I'm going to use the word right now. It's just, I had the courage to step out, because I didn't feel like I was, at the time, an equal, right? But I knew that if I didn't do this, that I would regret it. And I regretted it, and I would have regretted it well, listen, if I didn't do it, we wouldn't be here right now. Right?
We wouldn't be saying yes, exactly.
You wouldn't even know that, where these things will lead you to, and just realizing that they're just the person on the other side. And it just takes a small, and all that's all it was, right? It was just a conversation. I knew about your story. I did my research, right? And this is for anybody who's in an organization today. If you're in an organization, you're thinking about reaching out to that ideal client as a business owner, you have to know who they are first, right? Like, and that's, when I did my research with you, I took my time, I studied you, I learned about you through what was available on LinkedIn and then through some people around me. I learned about you, and then I learned about what your interests were, and then I had the courage just to say, hey, would you be open to a quick 15-minute conversation?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it was, right? Like it, and it's like, and I got there, and I was I'm not going to say uncomfortable, but maybe a little bit nervous to say, okay, I'm here now. What do I want to do? So you got to prepare yourself. So when you're in that room, you're asking the questions that you really want to know,
Mm-hmm. And
right? Because
we've shared
and it's
these tips
mm,
before, but anybody out there that's thinking like I'd like to do that, but I really don't even know where to start. Like we can help you through a coaching session to get there, to get that prepared, because there are people out there that are ahead of your game that we can help you connect with, and it's really fun to connect with people and make that connection. Yesterday yesterday I got a book, and I'll do a little plug here. So got this book, Once Upon a Leader, and the author Christine Myers. I was talking to her last week, and it's really about finding your story at the heart of your leadership. So I'm going to read this, and I'll definitely share my feedback. But it's how do we change their story? And part of the story that people have is someone's always better than me. And when
mm,
we've already been defeated, if that's our story, we'll never rise to the top. I remember when I went for the interview for the VP role, and I remember what I said, and it was really, I think sometimes I float up and I hear myself say it, and I said, the reason you need to hire me is because I'm the only one that believes that this is possible to actually achieve. And I
mm.
said that, and then I gave some examples, but I float out and I listen to myself, and I'm like, I actually said what I believe, as opposed to just waiting for someone to maybe fill in the blanks. I made sure that that was the clarity that I believe in this, and I know that this can be done. And I said it with certainty. And then I was a little bit more cocky. And I said, "Oh, and buy some more stocks because I'm going to make sure the stock price goes up," and it did. So I'll just put that out there. But I was confident, and also talking to the audience of the people that like what language do they, almost their love language. I was talking to their love
Mm.
language in the interview. So I used different words than I would as my normal words, but they were the love language of the other person. So actually that's a whole nother conversation that we don't even have
Yeah,
time for, because
yeah,
it's like one more
yeah.
minute. But
I know. Because as you're saying that, what I'm hearing is that VP Heather was already in the room having the conversation.
ooh, that's
Ooh,
right.
right. So that
Ooh,
wasn't even you, right? And some of us that are, I know somebody on the call that's listening, they know about the future self and stepping into that future self. That's where you were operating from. It's one of the things that it's one of our guiding principles in terms of how we coach. Is like to step into your future self, make those decisions from that place. And what I
mm-hmm.
heard from you in that moment right now is you stepped into that future self when you went into that interview.
That's
I'm going to make
true.
the
I
stock
did.
price, you did, right? I'm going to make the stock price go up. I believe, I know, not just believe, but I know that this is what's going to happen. This is the results I'm going to create for you,
Yeah.
right? And that wasn't even you, right? Like that wasn't yesterday's Heather. That's tomorrow's Heather,
That's
right?
right. And it
And
wasn't even
that's
present moment. It was the future. And it was,
it,
I had already stepped in, I'd already seen myself as that person making a massive impact and change in the company we worked for. And it was, that's a place that many people don't stand in. And that's why they feel lost or disconnected or wondering, should I, apply for other jobs? Should I leave the company? These are the thoughts that are going through employers. These are the thoughts that might be going through some of your heads. And John and me, we both left an organization because those thoughts went through our heads too. So, we know where you are, we know where you've been, and we know how to get you to your future self. That's friggin' amazing. So say
yeah.
yes with us. Say yes to your
Yeah.
future self. All right,
Say
we've
yes
got
to
to
all
call
the
to
scary
action.
stuff. Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Well, I think the call to action is step out, say yes to something that scares you today. And if it means reaching out, and actually, I think what we're talking about is two things. Number one, go share some love. And if it scares you, makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable in a good way, then go do it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
go check our posts from yesterday, and we have 5 ways on how you can show love in the workplace that's appropriate. So go check that out. The other one is go do something and say yes to something that you've been holding off on, right? So if you've been holding off on saying yes to connecting with somebody, make today that day that you're going to do that. or at least start the process, learn about them, research them. Like if you need more info, reach out to us, but take that first step today.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. So
I love that.
I guess we're gonna leave it there. Oh wow. Okay. So happy Wednesday, everybody. We will be back on Friday. Wishing you all a great one. Talk to you all soon. Take care.
Bye. Bye.